Okay, so this is going to be a continuation video from my last video I just uploaded about public percentages, reading the opening line, and overreactions, underreactions. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few examples here, the difference between a overreaction and an underreaction. Okay, so we have here Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFL. Okay, that's the first one. Colorado Buffaloes, college football, obviously, and BYU, college football. All right, so let's see if we can get out of these pop-ups here. Now, since we had BYU the other night, we'll talk about BYU first, okay? So this is going to be considered a overreaction for Cincinnati, okay? Now, you see here how they have Cincinnati as a closing line. Well, they were favored by 1 point, okay? Right here it's showing a little bit of a flawed line here, because at some places Cincinnati was actually the favorite, but here it's showing that BYU was the favorite against Cincinnati. So it did close at -1 for BYU, but for a long time it was actually Cincinnati was the closing favorite. They were favored for a long time throughout, leading up to game time. And I feel like the Sharps probably came in late on BYU and just hit the line pretty hard. And that's why BYU ended up winning that game. But what I wanted to talk about is this being an overreaction, because Cincinnati came into this matchup, okay, they were predicted power rankings wise to be a lot better than BYU. But if you looked at how they've been playing, they had lost the prior 2 games. They lost to Oklahoma in a blowout, and then they lost to a prior team. So they were on a 2-game skid, and that line was going toward them, okay? Even though they had BYU as the opening favorite. So keep that in mind. Now, at the end, obviously, we saw the result. BYU closed as the favorite. But for the majority of the day, Cincinnati was a favorite. So that was like an overreaction. That's why I ended up taking BYU in that matchup, because BYU came off of a loss, but prior to that, they were playing really good football. Okay, so there was value to take BYU in that matchup. So this would be considered an overreaction for Cincinnati. Now this one right here, Colorado Buffaloes, okay? Same exact situation. Now, they had Colorado as a closing line of 2.5. Okay, a very low line. So it's typically telling you that it's going to be a slight overreaction here. But in reality, it was an underreaction, because a lot of people were initially taking Nebraska, which I felt kind of into the trap of taking Nebraska in this matchup. And you're not going to always get these games perfect, okay? You're going to make some mistakes. Now that I realize, and now that I've seen this game, and you could kind of overanalyze things, Colorado was actually the right side here, okay? Now, Colorado ended up blowing out Nebraska 36-14. If you look prior, they beat TCU. So they showed at the time that they were worthy of being a favorite, okay? So that's why they came in as a favorite here. And a lot of people were going against them here. Now, they beat TCU, and at the time, TCU was in the top 25. So they had beaten a good team from what people were expecting. So they had momentum, obviously, going into this Nebraska game. And Nebraska wasn't really showing anything to warrant them being an underdog at +2.5. They should have been a bigger underdog, because I feel like, they played a tough game against Minnesota, lost a close game, but it was still a loss. So we didn't really know what type of Nebraska team that was, and they weren't proven. So this was considered an underreaction, with Colorado only being a -2.5 point favorite at home. I feel like they should have been a 7-point favorite. They should have been a lot bigger of a favorite, especially coming off this win against TCU. All right, so another game that I want to talk about is this Tampa Bay game. This, on the other hand, was another underreaction. Okay, so they made Tampa Bay a low favorite here. All right, so they made them a low favorite against Chicago, which we in fact had Tampa Bay in this matchup. This was one of my favorite plays from that week, week 2, and they made Tampa Bay a 2.5 point favorite against Chicago after they had just beaten Minnesota. Okay, and Chicago had come off of a loss, team that wasn't proven, and Tampa Bay ended up covering. So this was considered an underreaction, making Tampa Bay less than a field goal at home. They should have probably been a higher favorite. They went and ended up winning by 10 points in this matchup. So this is just some examples of what overreactions and underreactions. It's not going to really assist you in any type of strategy. I'm just telling you what is an overreaction and what's an underreaction and how to spot those differences. Okay, certain teams, when a team is being favored, don't let that sway you off of them, especially if they're showing that they're playing well at the time. Okay, so there's a reason why the odds makers make certain teams favored. All right, a lot of people thought that Chicago was the better team, which they came into the season, or they were supposed to be a lot better than Tampa Bay starting the season. Okay, but they made Tampa Bay here a favorite. Now, on the other hand, they had Nebraska. Nebraska was supposed to be a better team than Colorado, yet they came in with Colorado as being a favorite. Same thing with BYU. Cincinnati was supposed to be the better team, and they came in with BYU being the opening favorite until it moved. All right, so those are how you could spot overreactions, underreactions, and then you can go from there. So, but you need to know how teams are performing, because without knowing that information, the line movements, the opening lines mean absolutely nothing. So hope that helped in this video. So I'll be back with some more videos. So comment, rate, and subscribe. I'll see you then.